welcome back to this workshop dedicated to the doshas. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the doshas. The three main doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and the doshas in general are these elemental forces that are predominant in every single human being. So we all are composed of the three doshas, and these doshas are themselves based on the five elements. We're going to talk a little more about the elements in your book, but the elements, the main five elements are air, ether, water, fire, and earth. And so Vata is basically composed of air and ether, Pitta composed of water and fire, Kapha composed of earth and water. And so we all are composed of the five elements, but we all have a very unique constitution with one or more doshas being dominant. So how I said previously in a previous class is that we all have a very unique constitution. We can be monodoshic, we can be bidoshic, we can be tridoshic. But we all are composed of these five elements. And so when these doshas are out of balance, as we have seen in our previous class, it causes different problems in the body, and it can affect the other factors of balance that we have mentioned before, which are the dhatus, the tissues, which are the way we digest, the way we eliminate waste from our body. It can also affect our emotional balance. And for instance, the doshas hold also emotional qualities. So Vata dosha is basically linked to the nervous system, also to the heart center, and as well to the colon, so the final part of the digestive system. So Vata is very linked emotionally to the emotions of fear, of stress, of overwhelm, of anxiety. So people who have a strong Vata aggravation or imbalance may experience these kind of symptoms, or people who are highly dominant in the Vata dosha may be more prone to these kind of emotional imbalances if they're not feeling balanced, if they're not imbalanced. So Pitta is connected to the digestive system. Pitta is the fire element. So as we've seen before, Agni, the fire, one of the main Agnis are located in the digestive system. So whenever there is fire in the belly, that is Pitta, and it can cause digestive issues, for instance. This is one of the typical symptoms. And emotionally speaking, it can also be related to the emotion of anger when Pitta is disbalanced. And then we have Kapha, which is composed of air, earth, and water. And Kapha being that kind of dosha, which when it is balanced emotionally, it is connected to the heart. And when it is imbalanced, then it can be disconnected from the heart and be too much in the ego, or it can experience greed, envy, these kind of things. But when it is balanced, Kapha dosha is a pure loving heart and very wise dosha. So these are more the emotional aspects. Let's go a little bit more in the physical aspect. So Vata dosha is that very much airy dosha. So when it is imbalanced, it can cause diseases and physical imbalances such as whenever you have too much air in the body, so such as, for example, flatulence, for example, constipation. This is when there is too much air, so it dries out even the fecal matters in your body, or it dries out or it creates too much gas, too much air in the body. Other typical symptoms or physical imbalances for Vata can be related to the nervous system. So anytime you have people, so we've talked about this earlier, but anytime you have people with anxiety, depression, or things like that, this is connected to the nervous system. And physically speaking, it's going to affect the nervous system in the way of, for example, neuralgia, paralysis, or any degenerative illness of the brain, for example, the central nervous system. Also, a typical physical symptom for Vata can be too much air in the joints. So it can cause arthritis or osteoporosis and cause, therefore, a drying out of the synovial liquid in the joint, and therefore cause degeneration of the joint tissues. Another typical symptoms is also lower back pain, when there is chronic pain in the body, or stiffness or dull pain in the morning. This is also connected to Vata dosha. That's for Vata. Next one, Pitta, physical symptoms for Pitta. So you have to really think in terms of elements and elementary forces. So water and fire, what this means, and highly predominant in fire. Pitta is highly predominant in fire. So what this means is wherever there is too much fire in the body, we can be sure that this is an aggravation of Pitta dosha. So typical physical symptoms can be inflammation. Yeah, too much heat in the body, inflammation. So all the inflammatory diseases are connected to Pitta. Also skin issues. Whenever you experience skin issues, it's a Pitta aggravation. So anything like psoriasis, dermatitis, eczema, acne, whatever it is, that is a Pitta dysfunctioning. Then Pitta, as I said previously, is connected to the digestive system and specifically to the filtration organ of the liver, the bile, the gallbladder, and the digestive system in general. So each time you have digestive issues, gastritis, or you have liver disorders, this is connected again to a Pitta disorder, a Pitta disbalance. Finally, whenever you have acidity, too much acidity in the body, this can also be a Pitta disease. Pitta has also a connection to the heart, so heart problems can also be related to Pitta as well as for Vata. Vata people can also experience, or Vata aggravation can also translate into heart disease or heart issues. Another typical Pitta disease or imbalance can be anemia or iron deficiency, when Pitta is so strong that it burns even the iron, even the nutrients, even the minerals in your body, these kind of things. Hyperactivity is also a very typical Pitta imbalance. People who generally have ADHD, attention deficit disorders, or who have hyperactivity are usually highly dominant in Pitta dosha, or have a high level of Pitta in their dosha constitution. And then finally, Kapha. So Kapha is based on earth and water. So the typical physical symptoms is when there is excess water in the body. So if you have too much mucus in the body, if you have congestion in the lungs, for example, or chronic sinusitis, bronchitis, this is a Kapha disbalance. Also, if you experience water retention, that's again a Kapha imbalance. If you have for example, tissue overgrowth, too much earth element, that's also Kapha imbalance. So a typical tissue overgrowth can be endometriosis, it can be also tumors in the body. So anytime there's a tumor in the body, it's actually a Kapha aggravation, usually caused by Vata, usually caused by some stress in the nervous system, but the symptom is a typical Kapha symptom. Another typical physical aspect of Kapha can be high cholesterol, for example, or diabetes, or overweight, even obesity. That's also a Kapha aggravation. Too much density, too much earth element. So it creates too much density in the body and this overweight that some people can experience. Also, when you have edema, so you have concentration of water in certain parts of the body, in certain tissues, or in certain channels of the body. This is also Kapha. Asthma is also Kapha. It's too much congestion in the respiratory system. So all of these are Kapha. So you have to always think in terms of elements. And in Ayurveda, what is really nice is that it always makes sense. It's always very logical when we think in terms of elements. It's very much an elementary based science. So if you want to know more about the elements, there's a chapter that is dedicated in the book on that I highly recommend for you to read. Each element is connected to certain body parts, is connected to certain chakras, to certain senses also. So I highly invite you to check if you want to know a little bit more about the specific elements. Good. And finally, what I wanted to add here on the doshas is that you can totally work with the doshas in terms, or balance the doshas out if through the yoga practice, through the asana practice. So in your book, you will find also that there are 3 different sequences for the 3 different doshas, a Vata, Pitta, and Kapha sequence that you can try according to your own dosha type. And generally speaking, considering the emotional aspects that I've mentioned before, for Vata people, you want to really introduce a very soft, calming asana practice. You want to do something very slow. So restorative practices, yin yoga, or even you can do vinyasa. You can do also more dynamic practice, but in a very slow flow mode with extra breaths between the asanas, or maybe doing less rounds of Surya Namaskar. This would be an appropriate practice for Vata dosha. For Pitta dosha, you want a very still challenging practice, because Pitta is a very fiery dosha and needs that physical practice that extra challenge, but not overheating. We want to avoid too much fire in the practice. So for example, Bikram yoga or hot yoga practices or power yogas that are really too intense would be probably aggravating the Pitta dosha. So we want to really find that nice balance between challenge yet not overheating. And finally, Kapha dosha is the one that can handle stronger practices. Kapha is the most dense doshas of all of the doshas, so it has more endurance. Kapha people tend to also be less sick. Let's say they have a better physical endurance, a better immune system usually as the other doshas. And they can be nervously also a little bit stronger. So Kapha can handle the most dynamic practice. So for Kapha, you can really go very strong. You can do Ashtanga, Vinyasa practices. You can do strong Hatha practices. You can even do, if you like, 108 Surya Namaskar. Just make sure that there are no injuries, especially if there is a condition of obesity or overweight. Of course, in that case, you need to adapt the practice to the physical condition of the student. But Kapha can definitely handle a lot more than the other doshas. So that's for the physical practice. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this workshop on the doshas, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye. It's actually multi-factor and that's how it works in a holistic way, yeah? So the first thing that we need to have balanced in order to achieve balance and health is balanced doshas. So you may have heard of the doshas before. The doshas are certain elementary forces based on the 5 elements, which I'm going to explain in a second. So these are elementary forces that are present in every body's constitution. So everybody has a birth constitution, which is called the prakriti or prakruti, depending on the spelling. Or prakruti with an U, that's the birth constitution. Yeah, so everybody is born with a specific combination, a very unique combination of doshas. And then the vikriti, or vikruti, again, it depends on the books, is the imbalance. So over the course of your adult life, you may develop a certain imbalance in your doshas, referred to your birth constitution. So there's 3 different doshas. We have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. You may have heard of these 3 doshas before. By the way, it's Kapha. PH, we spell it PH, we pronounce it Kapha in Sanskrit. Okay, so these 3 doshas, and we're going to have a specific video on each of these doshas to go a bit deeper into them. But these 3 doshas are the main ones. And they're based, as I said, on elementary forces, so on the 5 elements. So Vata is mainly composed of air and ether. Okay, Pitta is composed of fire and water. And Kapha is composed of earth and water. And these are the 5 elements. So each dosha has certain elementary forces and will influence like how a body will be, how a body looks, how a body functions, what's the body's balance. So these 3 doshas have to be balanced. So it's like in Chinese medicine, basically, everything is based on the elements. And when vikriti occurs, yeah, it will affect the birth constitution. So let me give an example here. I will remove this now. I will give you a concrete examples. So the prakruti, as I was mentioning before, you can have different combinations, but every combination is very unique. So there's 7 billion different dosha combinations out there, as there are more than 7 billion people on this planet. Yeah, so we all have a very unique constitution. So they broke it down into these 3 main doshas, but actually you specifically have a very unique combination of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and that no one else has. Yeah, and there's people who are what we call monodoshic. They have one dosha that is more dominant than the others, but of course you still have Pitta. Everyone has Vata, Pitta, Kapha because we're all composed of the same elements, but you can have one dosha that is more dominant in your case. So let's take an example here. Let's say you're more dominant in Vata, or you can be bidoshic. And then in that case, you have 2 doshas that are more dominant. So let's take the example of your Vata Pitta dominant person, or you can be tridoshic. Yeah, you can have the 3 doshas kind of at the same level. Pitta, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Let's say you're a Vata dominant dosha, and that is your birth constitution. If imbalance occurs, it's going to, at first
affect more your dominant dosha than your less dominant dosha. Yeah, because the dominant dosha is always the most sensitive dosha. So when we're talking about the Vikriti, it means that the Vikriti is going to be the one related to your birth constitution. You see what I mean? So if we have a Vata dominant person, it's going to mainly affect Vata at first. And if this imbalance is not addressed and over the years it gets worse and worse, then only it can affect also your other doshas, your Pitta and your Kapha dosha eventually. But you're going to be the dominant dosha will be the one that is going to be the most likely to be imbalanced at first because it's your most dominant and sensitive dosha. So same thing also for the other dosha combinations. Okay? So we need to have balanced doshas. And again, we're going to address all of the different symptoms, typical symptoms for different imbalances in a separate video. So let's move on to the next factor of balance. The next factor of balance is healthy dhatus. Healthy dhatus, D-H-A-T-U-S. So dhatus, what we call the dhatus, are the bodily tissues. So, the bodily tissues. There are 7 dhatus in total. We have bone tissues, we have fat tissues, we have nerve tissues, we have muscle tissues, we have reproductive tissues, we have plasma, we have blood tissues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect, yeah? There are 7 dhatus. So these bodily tissues are present in your body, of course. So we need these type of tissues to be healthy. Yeah? If one of those tissues gets weaker, it's going to affect it, and then it might also affect the other 7. So this is an important factor of balance, and we're going to see later on how we can act on the dhatus. And you will see how everything is interconnected. Yeah, so I'm going to remove this now. So the next factor of balance is we want optimal malas. We want optimal malas. So what are the malas? M-A-L-A-S. The malas are the metabolic waste. Yeah. So metabolic waste, there are 3 main metabolic wastes, and then there's one that is a submala. So, as you can guess, the first one are feces, urine, and sweat. And one submala is a submala because it's not every day that we eliminate it. It's, for us women, it's menstruation. So, why optimal malas? Yeah, in Ayurveda, we focus a lot on this because if we don't eliminate waste and toxins out of the body on a regular basis, it builds up and then it can create disease and disbalance. Yeah. So optimally in Ayurveda, we consider that we have to go have a bowel movement every single day, once or twice. Urines have to be several times a day. Sweating has to be optimal and has to be not smelly. If you have a smelly sweating, it is an indication of metabolic waste overload or toxins in the body. And menstruation, according to Ayurveda, is supposed to be pain-free, yeah, and regular. So if there is irregular menstruation or painful menstruation, it is a sign of disbalance. It is a sign of metabolic waste overload. So that's why we focus a lot on the malas in Ayurveda, and it's one of the main factors of balance. So I'm going to remove this now. The next factor of balance, next factor of balance is optimal Agni. And you may have heard of this word before. Optimal Agni. A-G-N-E. Agni means digestive fire. Digestive fire. So, why focusing on Agni? Because if your digestive fire is too low or too strong and not optimally working, you're going to either not burn the nutrient, you're not going to burn the food that you're consuming, and it's going to create metabolic waste, as we've seen before. Or if the digestive fire is too strong, it's going to overburn the food that you're consuming, including the nutrients and the prana that we take from the food. Yeah, the life force energy that you get from the food. So it's important that the digestive fire is optimal because you can have the best lifestyle, the best diet, the best superfoods. If your digestive fire is not working optimally, it's not going to do anything for you. Yeah, so digestive Agni and the digestive fire has to be optimal. And there's actually not just one fire. We could think, oh, the digestive fire is just the one that we have in our digestive system. Actually, no. We have physical digestive fires and subtle digestive fires. Let me break them down for you. So we have the physical one. So we have one in the stomach, one in the digestive system. Clear? Then we have 5 different agnis related to the elements that help us to metabolize and integrate the elements in our bodies. The different 5 elements that we've talked about, air, ether, fire, water, and earth. Then we have 7 agnis that are related to the dhatus, to the bodily tissues. So we have 1 digestive fire for each dhatu, so that the bones, for example, can assimilate the proper nutrients into the tissue, so they are in optimal health, and so on and so on. So all for the 7 dhatus. So we can see if digestive fire is not optimal in the dhatus, it will weaken the dhatus, and ultimately it can cause imbalance. So it's all related. So these are the physical agnis. And then we have subtle agnis that are connected to the koshas. So if you haven't watched the koshas yet, I invite you to watch the video dedicated to the koshas. We have different agnis related to the koshas, except for the physical kosha, which is the physical body, because the agni for the physical body is in the stomach that we have already here. So we have one that is called prana agni. Prana agni helps us to digest prana, life force energy, to take it into our cells, to bring cellular breathing, to bring health and longevity and vitality into our system. But when there is this balance, and this happens a lot to many people, is that this is not happening, The prana agni is not efficient due to certain factors, and then prana doesn't reach your cells, and you can get deficient in certain nutrients, and you can get chronically tired. So this is just to give you an example on how this works. Prana agni, then we have mana agni. Mana agni, referring to manomaya kosha, if you remember the koshas. So this one helps us to digest emotions and thoughts. So if you don't digest your emotions, if there are certain experiences in your life that have never been metabolized, integrated, and digested properly, it can create disbalance. So that's why also emotional balance is so important. I'm going to get to it later. Mana agni. The third one is Vijnana agni, referring to Vijnanamaya kosha. So Vijnana agni is the digestive fire that helps us to digest intuitive thoughts, intuition, intuitive knowledge. So it helps us to assimilate it, integrate it, and serve our highest purpose. That's Vijnana agni. And then the final one is Ananda agni, which helps us to integrate, referring to Anandamaya kosha, of course, which helps us to integrate experiences of bliss, experiences of enlightenment. It helps us to digest it, to integrate it, because we need to integrate them. So these are the subtle agnis, and these are the physical agnis. So you can see there's not just physical agnis, and everything has to work optimally. Otherwise, it's going to create this balance. Let's move on to the next one. I will remove this now. Okay, next one is a trio of 3 different things that we call tejas. Oh, excuse me, not first one. Ojas, tejas, and prana. So everyone knows what prana is, I guess. Prana, you guys know, is life force energy, or vital energy, or vital force energy. So that's the life force energy. Prana is that life force energy, that divine intelligence that flows into the cells and brings to the cells cellular breathing. Without prana, your cells don't breathe. They don't live. Without prana, we're lifeless. We wouldn't live without prana. So prana is necessary. And of course, we need to get in as much prana as our cells need to breathe. Ojas is cellular immunity. It's basically your immune system. It's what's bringing vitality, longevity to your body, to your cells. So, and prana, by bringing cellular breathing, also promotes cellular immunity. And there's many things that can lower ojas. Fear can lower ojas. Unhealthy lifestyle can lower ojas. Not respecting your biorhythm and sleeping during the day while being active during the night can lower ojas. Over-exercise, stressful situations, emotional stress can lower ojas. But the more ojas is high, the more you're going to live long and healthy and balanced. And finally, we have tejas, which is the metabolism. metabolism, yeah, or the metabolic activity of cells. It's the movement, yeah. If prana comes in, we need to bring prana to the cells. Without the movement, without metabolism, without tejas, the prana cannot reach the cell, and the cell cannot breathe, and it cannot promote ojas. So we need metabolism. And here again, we can have a deficient metabolism. We can either have a metabolism that is too low, which in certain cases can cause hypothyroidism, for example, because the thyroid gland is the one that is regulating the metabolism, or we can have hyperthyroidism if in case tejas is too high, or autoimmune disease. Yeah, a metabolism that is too strong, too high, and not optimal can cause autoimmune diseases also. So the metabolic activity of cells is also crucial. So these three work as a trio, and they serve each other, and they have to be balanced so that we can reach overall balance and health. Yeah. So that was number 5, and now next one. Next one is the most important one, but I saved it for the last. The most important one is emotional balance. It seems very random, emotional balance. It seems actually like, yes, of course, emotional balance, but in Ayurveda, emotional balance is the number one cause of balance. If there is mental or emotional chronic stress or emotional trauma that is not addressed from childhood or whatever, it will cause disbalance. Yeah? We say that 80% of disease and disbalance in Ayurveda comes from this, comes from the stress, comes from the emotional trauma, comes from stuff that has not been digested, that has not been integrated, and that is still making us operate from a distorted place. So if we can have like the best diet, we can have the best lifestyle. If we don't address this aspect, we will still, never reach that perfect state of balance and health. So this is number 1. It's not the easiest one to address. But in Ayurveda, the approach is actually very simple. Yet, of course, it's not simple. It's something that takes time. But the Ayurvedic approach for emotional balance is actually observation and release. So the first thing is being aware, and that's not the easiest part because a lot of us sometimes operate from the subconscious mind, and we're not even aware of what is actually emotional imbalance that we have. So observation and being aware is the first step. Yeah, being aware that we have certain patterns or certain programmings or certain wounds that we are still, from which we are still operating. And then the second step, according to Ayurveda, is to release it, because if we keep it in, of course, it will affect everything. So releasing is probably the hardest part. Because releasing is not just, okay, I release and I decided to release. So this is something then that you can learn on your yogic path. There's many ways. This is a very personal journey, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's all about letting the emotions go in the way you choose it to do. But it has to be exposed from your nervous system, because otherwise you're still going to operate from that cellular memory that is going to affect you and hold you back, and going to affect also the doshas, the dhatus, and everything, especially Agni. Agni, we say, is the second brain. You have heard probably that before. The gut is the second brain. When this is not okay, if the heart center, the emotional center, and the mind, the central nervous system are not okay, it's going to affect the second brain, and then the digestive system is going to be out of whack. So that's why you can see people who have a lot of digestive issues chronically, or IBS, or they don't have a good digestion. That comes usually, according to Ayurveda, to something deeper, to stress or emotional stress that they're going through, and it's just the body translating it this way, because the gut is really the second brain, and there is a deep connection between the nervous system and the digestive system. So it's all about observing, becoming aware, and releasing. And here we are. We have, as you can see, it's a whole, and it works together, and nothing is really separate. And that's why, that's the beauty of Ayurveda, is that we address each and one of them as a very individual, because you have a very unique dosha constitution. So we never apply the same treatment to all of the people. Yeah, and something that might work for you might not work for somebody else, because you are very unique. Yeah, we're very unique. So this is the beauty of Ayurveda. We really address every case individually, and it's about addressing all these aspects to come back into the natural state of health and balance that we talked about earlier. Thank you so much, and I see you for the next one. Hi, everyone, and welcome back for this Ayurveda workshop. Now we're going to talk about the gunas. So the gunas are fundamental arising forces, predominant forces. We call them also sometimes predominant forces of suffering, although they're not all meant or related to suffering. But the gunas are these predominant forces that you can find in everything, not just in beings, but in a lifestyle, in food, in objects and things, in energy and information. It's a predominant general force that is present in everything. So they're in the number of 3. Yeah. So there is Sattva Guna first, which I'm going to address now. So Sattva Guna, what we call Sattva, is the highest Guna. Yeah. So it's the one that holds the highest level of prana. So it's the highest Guna, we say. It's the highest state. And what we mean by that is that yogis, such as us, yeah, when we're embracing a yogic path, we want to tend towards sattva. We want to go towards this highest guna. We want to reach that state of harmony. So it's that state of harmony and balance. Yeah, so once we are on this yogic path, we want to reach that state of harmony and balance. And sattva guna is also the state where lies the true self. So it's all about finding that true self. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, they say yoga is the path from the self, through the self, to the self. So it's really about finding that true self. That's the whole goal of yoga, again, is the sattva guna. So this is this state of where you also are true to your higher self, but also your inner teacher. Yeah, the teacher is within you. You know where to go. You know from this higher perspective, what is the way, what is your path. So that is the sattva guna. In terms of food, because there can be like sattvic lifestyle, sattvic activities. A sattvic activity would be yoga, or doing pranayama, or meditating. That is sattvic. You can have sattvic colors. White is a sattvic color, for example. And then you have also sattvic food. I'm going to address the sattvic diet in a separate video, but the sattvic food is really the one that holds the highest level of prana. Yeah? Foods that are fresh, that are whole, that are vegetarian, that are high in prana, high in life force energy, whole living foods. And there is a list of certain sattvic foods that I'm going to mention in that separate video. So you want to go and jump to that video if you're interested. So sattva, that's the highest guna. All right. Then we have the second guna, which is rajas. So rajas is nor good or bad. Yeah, it's an intermediate kind of state where it's actually meaning activity. It's action. It's activity. Yeah, it's all about action, activity, and the role that we have in life. But rajas can become, so to speak, negative if we get lost in that activity, if we get lost in that action, if we, for example, become hyperactive, or if, for example, we identify too much with the role that we have in life. For example, we identify as a doctor, or we identify as a lawyer that we are, or the yoga teacher that we are. Like we are too much lost in the external reality. We're too much lost in the illusion. And this is where it can become negative per se, is that we can become overwhelmed, or we can get lost in the illusion and not remember the true self and get, away from the true self, or get caught in this false self and that false perspective of ourselves. So this is what rajas is. Yeah. And it can create sometimes overstimulation, hyperactivity, overwhelm if we're not conscious. But rajas is not really negative. We need action. Yeah, we're still physical beings yes, we are energy beings, spiritual beings, but having a physical experience. So we're here also to interact with a physical reality. So we're here also to experience activity, experience action. But it has to be aligned with sattva. It has to be aligned with the yogic path and with who we truly are, and not get lost in the action or get identified too much with it. So that is rajas. In terms of food, rajas is still fresh. It's still fresh food, but more heavy than sattvic food. So it's more dense. It's going to give you more energy. So for example, eggs can be considered rajas, raw eggs in particular. Raw eggs give that extra density, that extra energy that sattvic food might not have. And sometimes it's needed. Yeah, if, for example, you're recovering from an illness or you're weakened and you need that extra boost of density and energy in your system, then rajasic food can be also beneficial, but not every day. Rajasic food should not be for everyday consumption. Okay, so which leads me now next to the third guna, which is tamas. So tamas is more of a negative guna in the sense that it's the state of ignorance. It's the state of laziness. It's the state of darkness. Yeah, that's what tamas is that state that is completely opposite to the true self. It's the false self. It's when we are completely in that ego trip and lost completely in the illusion and we don't remember who we truly are on a soul level. That is tamas. And in terms of the physical body, yeah, that's the state of when we're more lethargic. We have no drive for life. We have no drive to go and, serve our higher purpose. We're in this lethargic and lazy state. We're heavy. So this is the state of tamas, and it's the complete opposite state of sattva. Yeah. In your book, you have this little reference to the story of the hare and the tortoise, which explains that you may have heard of this fable before. It's a fable about it's the rabbit and the turtle. So they're doing a race, and the turtle is really slow, but the turtle goes at its own rhythm, yeah, and keeps going and keeps holding on. And the rabbit instead is very arrogant and thinks he's going to win because he knows he's so fast. So he's completely lost in his ego trip, and he thinks he's so fast and so strong that he can sleep and take a nap. And when he wakes up, the turtle is almost at the end line, and he runs and tries to catch up, but in the end, he loses the race. And this is a very good example for tamasic behavior, is when you're too arrogant and too in your ego trip to see the truth. Yeah, so this is tamas. In terms of food, tamasic food is all you can think of in terms of bad food. So it's like processed food. Meat is also considered tamasic. The meat is something also that in yoga we try to not consume because of the principle of the limb of yoga, which is ahimsa, which is non-violence, because we don't want to eat animals and hurt other living beings. And in Ayurveda, we say that meat can cause hyperacidity, or an acidic body. So it's very hard to digest, and it can create metabolic waste. We've seen from the factors of balance video that I've, if you want, you can check that. So it's processed food, meat, fish, canned food, tinned food. Onions and garlic are also considered tamasic, not because necessarily they're bad. It's just that it's not for daily consumption. Onions are set to cause irritability. Yeah, can make you irritable. And then garlic can drain your energy, and it's sometimes really hard to digest. Also, some people have a hard time. It can prevent them from having a good sleep if they're eating it before sleep. So it's not that it's bad, but it's not for every day. And in Ayurveda, we use it more for medicinal purposes. So we're using garlic and onion in medicinal preparations. Alcohol, of course, is also tamasic, because it disbalances actually the three doshas. And so is coffee. Yeah, so sorry about the coffee lovers, but coffee is also considered tamasic. It causes acidity in the body. So yeah, there's like a list of these foods that are considered tamasic, and which can lower our vibration and which can prevent us to get into the sattvic state and reach greater awareness. So that was it. These are the gunas. I hope you enjoy it, and I see you for the next one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new workshop. Today, we're going to talk about Ayurveda, this ancient Indian healing system that you might have heard about before. So Ayurveda comes from the Sanskrit name, of course, Ayur, which means life or daily living, and Veda, which means knowledge or science. That's why we call Ayurveda also the science of life, or the knowledge of life. So Ayurveda, as I was saying, is a very ancient system that we think is more than 5,000 years old, probably even older than that. We don't have specific traces of Ayurveda, like older traces of Ayurveda, because at its beginnings, it was only transmitted and passed on in a verbal form, in an oral form, by the rishis. Yeah, the people that we call the rishis are these great yogis, these masters, these original sages who received the knowledge of Ayurveda in meditation. So this is a very unique thing with Ayurveda, is that it's not something like an empiric science. It's not based on observation and experiment. It has actually been received through in meditation by these rishis in the form of what we could call intuitive knowledge. So this is very peculiar, very specific with Ayurveda. And then over time, it has been put into a written form. And we have traces of Ayurveda, but just traces. We don't have like a specific book just talking about Ayurveda or a specific Bible of Ayurveda. But we have traces and elements of Ayurveda in the Vedas, the fundamental Vedas, in the Upanishads, which are these ancient Vedic scripts, and the Bhagavad Gita that you may have heard of, which I really recommend for you to read as teachers to be, because the Bhagavad Gita is all about the yogic path, and it's beautiful because it shows us the philosophy of yoga in a very entertaining way, because it's based on a story. The story of Prince Arjuna, who has intimate conversations with Krishna, God. So a must read. So we have traces of Ayurveda in these scripts, but that's it basically. We don't have so many things on Ayurveda. But of course it is widespread in India. We have a lot of Indian clinics, Ayurvedic clinics in India, or Ayurvedic doctors or practitioners who are still very active there. And we also have Ayurveda in the West. So basically it's coming from India. And as I said, it's very ancient. And what is Ayurveda actually talking about is that it's a whole science. It's a science of life. So it's all about this deep understanding of the human being in its emotional, psychological, spiritual aspects, not just physical aspects. And it also addresses the human being as a microcosm opposed to the macrocosm. So it's this deep and intimate relationship between the human being and the cosmos. So it's not having this dual approach where everything both are separate, the human being and the cosmos. It's actually a very unified approach where we are a microcosm to the macrocosm. We are a reflection of what happens on the universal level. We are made of the same elements as the universe. We are made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the 5 main elements. So we are just a reflection of this universal consciousness, that we can call the Brahman, and we are the Atman. We are the individual soul, and there's a very unique, deep relationship between both. If we embrace this path, this yogic path. It's all about finding this union again, between the Atman and the Brahman. So Ayurveda is this science of life. So not only addresses it addresses the human being and how we can, bring that human being back into balance, but it also addresses bigger concepts like the process of universal manifestation, like the primordial sounds of creation, how matter is created, how atoms react to a higher consciousness, things like that. So it's a very deeper, very vast science, actually. Not just the aspect that we might know in the West that is more focused on the diet and nutrition and things like that. So it's a whole science. It's a whole science. So that is Ayurveda. And the main basic concepts of Ayurveda that you need to understand are actually in the number of 3. So the first one that I would like to mention is this holistic approach that I was talking about. Ayurveda is really based on a holistic approach. It is a holistic science. Why? Because it understands the human being not just as a physical being. It understands the human body not just as a physical body. It actually acknowledges that the human being has many different layers, not just one. We have, yes, of course, the physical body, but we also have an emotional body. We also have a mental body. We also have an intuitive body. We also have an energetic body or a spiritual body. So we have many different layers that we're going to talk about in the next workshop when I'm going to be addressing what we call the koshas. But it's for you to show that this is how holistic Ayurveda is. It has this whole holistic approach into understanding that we're not just a physical body. And that has a great consequence, because what it means is that when we have disbalance occurring, when there is an imbalance, when there is disease, when there is a physical symptom occurring, it actually has a root cause. A physical symptom, according to Ayurveda, never shows up randomly. It never comes out of nowhere. It actually has an original root cause that we address in Ayurveda. And this root cause, 90% of time, according to Ayurveda, is stored or comes from the mental and emotional body. That's why we say in Ayurveda that 80 to 90% of disease or disbalances in Ayurveda actually come from emotional and mental stress. That's how important the impact of stress can be on the physical body. And even Western medicine understands it now. So that's something that we more and more understand, especially in our society where we live quite stressful lives sometimes. So this is the how we need to understand how holistic it is. It is that we are not focusing on the symptom. Yeah, contrary to Western medicine, we're not going to just, not to criticize Western medicine, but it's just we're not going to focus on the symptom. We're not going to just try and remove the symptom or numb the symptom and provide a medication for that. We're actually going to address the root cause. We're going to try to find out in which subtle body the root cause might be. Yeah, and we're going to address the person's entire life. We're going to look at the lifestyle. We're going to look at the diet. We're going to look at their habits. We're going to look even into how is their emotional and mental health. Yeah, so these are so important to Ayurveda. We know that through meditation, for example, or when you use techniques to balance and calm the nervous system, you're going to have also good results on the physical body. And sometimes we're going to even have like symptoms. We're going to have like direct results on the physical body and sometimes having a bettering of the condition of the person. So this is how Ayurveda addresses the human body as a whole and really looking into the root cause. So that's kind of the main difference with Western medicine. And Western medicine also, or Western science, up until now, I think, doesn't address the other bodies, the subtle bodies of a human being. So they're only considering the physical body, whereas Ayurveda considers also the other bodies that I just mentioned earlier. Okay, and that we're going to study in the next workshop on the koshas. So that is number one. The second basic concept of Ayurveda is the self-healing approach. Yeah, Ayurveda considers that the human being, again, is a reflection of the cosmos. The creator, or this supreme consciousness that has created this world, has not made mistakes. There is no mistake in nature. Everything is designed perfectly. Everything is designed to be in this perfect natural state of harmony, balance, and health. But if there is not health, harmony, and balance, if imbalance, disbalance occurs, that means that, as we were saying before, there is a root cause to it. There is something that has caused it over time. Yeah. But what Ayurveda considers also is that the body is a self-healing machine. It has actually nothing to heal because it was designed to be perfectly healthy and balanced. It has nothing to heal, but it has this ability, this powerful ability to bring itself back into its natural state of health. Yeah, when we use Ayurveda, when we work with Ayurveda, it's all about triggering, activating the body's natural healing response, because the body is a powerful self-healing machine. If you provide that space, if you provide that time, if you provide the proper tools for the body to rest, digest, relax, it can find that balance again. It can find that state of harmony again, that state of health. Yeah, so that's the principle. That's the second concept and powerful concept of Ayurveda, is that there is actually nothing that is not curable, according to Ayurveda, and that the body can naturally come back into this natural state of harmony and health. So that's the second approach. And then the third concept of Ayurveda is prevention. Yeah, it's all about keeping that state of balance, keeping that harmony, keeping that natural state of health, in order to never allow disease or disbalance to come or to occur. So it's also acting as a prevention. It's also helping the human body to remain in that state of health, balance, and harmony. So that is the basic concepts of Ayurveda. If you're interested in going deeper into that knowledge, or you want to have like a concrete example of how Ayurveda looks like in India in the traditional way, I recommend you look at a documentary that was streamed probably 10 years ago on Arte. It's a French-German TV channel, but it is also now on YouTube, so you can type it on Google and you hopefully will find it. Normally you can find it, and it's called My Indian Doctor. And it's a nice documentary because it shows how it really concretely looks like. Because in India we have all these we still have all these Ayurvedic clinics there and Ayurvedic doctors and practitioners. So it's still super big in India. And so this is the journey of a French lady who has been diagnosed, unfortunately, with stage 4 cancer. She has a brain tumor, above other issues in the body. And of course, she has received all the treatments she could have received in France. And she has been removed most of that tumor through surgery. But during this documentary, we can follow her, and the camera follows her into her journey to India, because she has heard of Ayurveda and she decides to give it a try. Yeah, she has heard of the benefits of it. And so she travels to India and goes into this Ayurvedic clinic to stay stay there for a few months, maybe a couple of months or something. And we can see her undergoing these very strange, strange to us Westerns, natural treatments. So she receives massages, she goes under a strict Ayurvedic diet, she receives treatments made out of plant medicine, she meditates, she does yoga, all these kind of things. And then during the documentary, you can see her travel back to France and go back to her oncologist, where she shares her results. And of course, she goes to her checkups, and the doctors are in shock. The doctors are in shock because she's considered healed. Yeah, she's considered cured from cancer, which technically, according to Western medicine, is not always feasible, is not always attainable through these processes, right? So she has that one-on-one conversation. We can see her talking to her oncologist, and he's or neurologist, I don't remember, but he's a very open-minded doctor, and he decides to look by himself. So he decides to travel back with her to India and for him to witness this with his own eyes. And he realizes how insane, and I mean, it's a very big shock for him, yeah, because he's like, okay, they're just doing this, meditating, plant medicine and diets and things like that, and that's it? Is that it, So, and yeah, he's quite shocked, but also very moved and very open-minded in the sense that he's saying at some point, how wonderful it would be if both medicines, both healing systems, the Western one and the Indian one, could collaborate, because they could have amazing results also as a prevention, right? So I'll let you watch it. There's more to discover. I'm not spoiling everything, but there's more to discover in this documentary. But it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful insight into the world of Ayurveda in India, the traditional, the original way how Ayurveda is practiced there. And it shows you, it gives you that perspective that it is possible. Of course, disclaimer, it might not work for everybody. Not everybody might have the same mindset that this lady had in the documentary, but really the science behind Ayurveda is all about when you give that space, when you give that time, when you give the proper tools, it is a self-healing machine, and it really has this ability to come back to this natural state of balance and health I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so this is my introduction for Ayurveda. Of course, we're going to dive way more deeper into Ayurveda and all the aspects and how we can use it ourselves in our daily practice. And we're going to talk a bit more about the koshas and these different layers to understand a bit better the holistic approach of Ayurveda. Thank you very much, and see you on the next.